Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 nerds by nerds, hanging out with.
Nerdarchy is Ted.
And we're going to give you 5 ways to put divine power in your world without any deities.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So Ethan sent us an email at nerdarchy@gmail.com for a GM911, but we feel like it's more of a suggestion. So we're going to do something we haven't done in a long time, and we're going to discuss a little world building in five easy steps.
So he's got his game that he's going to be starting in the very near future, and the players wanted to do something that was more like a Tolkien-esque world where there weren't gods. Now, I don't know whether he's got his players yet, the players have characters yet, but he begs the question, well, how do you do clerics and paladins in a world with no gods?
Well, that's true. Also, you could literally just look at the Middle Earth books and just steal that if you wanted to. But, Lord of the Rings obviously is a good inspiration. There's probably a lot of other good series out there. If you look at Game of Thrones, it is very magic light, and there isn't a whole. Although they have gods that they worship, there isn't a lot of presence of those deities. Aside from the Lady in Red and the Fire God or the Lord of Light, and even then, it's like it's a little sketchy, and like she could literally be doing some kind of like sorcery or something.
I was going to say she's a warlock personally.
Right. So like, and the other character that I think the other character that draws from that power line is in the books, but I don't think he's had much presence in the actual TV series. And he actually does resurrections.
Right.
So
well, I mean he's in the show.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the same presence
in
the show that he had in the books he's doing a bunch of resurrections.
Now, on the flip side of Game of Thrones, which is light on the magic, then we have Athos, which is a world completely devoid of gods. And the powers are elemental and sorcerer kings, and that's where they derive their power from. So it's a complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, and that world is considered closed off. So plainly closed off, which is like I guess that's more of a D&D ism or term than anything. But so what we did is, it isn't actually 5 steps. We came up with 5 ways to incorporate your divine casters and the divine into your world, even though you may not actually have deities.
Right. So first and foremost, we have ancestor worship, and there's a lot of that can be done in or that has been done in some RPG beliefs, but it's definitely rooted in modern culture as well.
Yeah, I mean, this could be very tribal, or I feel like any culture that's very honor bound, that pays homage to the past, they may draw on their ancestors. I mean, there's the new barbarian primal path that like screams this, even though that's not a divine caster class per se, but the idea is the same. A cleric or a paladin that actually draws their power and their magic from those that have gone before. They're able to use them as counsel, power their spells, whatever.
And when you're talking about divine, you're having those things where you can communicate with spirits. You have the ability to commune. It's literally a situation where you could be having a conversation with your great-great-great-grandfather, and through his this and that's, he's able to ascertain this information or observe this for you or communicate with other long past spirits and share the information with you. So
I think this is a great spot for role-playing opportunities for that particular player. I mean, as long as they don't start overshadowing the rest of the party excessively, but for the most part, he could literally play kind of like the crazy character that talks to his ancestors all the time, like whether he's casting spells or not. Just
right. I mean, he could believe that an ancestor literally walks with him, and he could have communications just all the time.
Well, what if he had 3 ancestors that walked with him?
Well, that's possible as well.
Well, I'm thinking, right, noble alternate knight background,
Oh.
and instead of having your traditional retainers, why not give them 3 ghosts that can occasionally provide information and role playing and stuff like that, but you wouldn't actually have the benefit of them physically being able to do things for you like you would with your regular retainers. So maybe the DM might occasionally give you advantage on a knowledge check, or allow you to make a knowledge check that you otherwise wouldn't be able to make, or just use them for plot hooks and stuff like that. So that might be kind of fun.
That sounds like a fabulous character. I would play that in a heartbeat.
So number 2 on our list of ways to incorporate divine power into your game without actual deities is the elements or nature.
So this is exactly what happens in Athos. They literally worship elements, fire, earth, air, wind, and you can get into any of the numerous, subplots like lava and wind, whatever.
And there's a bunch of different ways you could do this.
Para-elemental, that's the word I'm looking for.
Para-elemental. There's different ways you can do this. One of which could be that there's just actually a connection to those planes in this world. So certain individuals, like paladins and clerics, are actually able to channel that power and use it, right? And, they're elements, so they might not really, there's a give and a take usually with divine casters and divine characters between the religion or the deity and them. But this might just be them being able to access the power and never having to actually, have to spread a religion or be obligated.
Well, in 5th edition, they talk about the unwilling cleric.
Yes.
So this would easily fit in there. As opposed to being an unwilling cleric, you could literally be, well, something about me has a conduit to the elemental plane of whichever, and I have the ability to channel those things into these cleric-like effects.
And then the other side of that is it could literally just be religions dedicated to the elements for whatever reason, very much like in Dark Sun.
Right. So the next thing we go on to is like the ideals, or kind of the way paladins look is they have a belief. Okay, I am going to be this type of person, whether it be I'm devoted or I'm vengeful, and they go off on those ideals, and it is the power of that belief that spurns them forward. Yes, now when you look at paladins in 5th edition, you could very easily say, well, that's attached to this god and that one's attached to this god, but they don't have to be.
You can detach them, like Velcro.
There's nothing that says a paladin has to worship a god, and that's where that falls into, and that concept of being able to be so focused on this path fills them with magical power, and they are able to use it in the ways that they do.
I also kind of envision clerics of philosophy and thought as well, where maybe it's just that they just tap into this idea, and because of that they're able to wield divine power. And it doesn't come from anywhere in particular. It just comes from that enough people believe in this thing. And then this is going to be a recurring theme as well. Enough people believe in a thing that makes it real for them.
Right.
So with that, we drop down into our next category. And that is, I guess it's like Spiritism, animism. It's a very, it tends to be in more tribal traditions. It makes me think like Native American, and some others as well, where basically they kind of believe everything has a spirit. Like this rock has a spirit, this stream has a spirit, and why wouldn't a cleric be able to call to those? I mean, call to those for assistance. And in previous editions, there was a shaman class, right? So you could literally kind of recreate the shaman class just using the cleric, and picking whatever domain would be appropriate. And at the same time, I don't see why you couldn't have a paladin, kind of fall along the same lines as well.
Absolutely. So, as Dave was saying, everything has a spirit, and you've literally got the the Pocahontas Disney movie where she's calling out, the spirit of the wind and the spirit of the tree, and she's literally talking to them. So you could, similar to the ancestor worship, you could have these kind of conversations with inanimate objects, and it opens it up to far more role playing. And I think these type of characters would allow you to have a lot more fun, because how often does a cleric get to have a conversation with their deity? It's not very often. But when everything is in these infinitesimal little amounts of power, adds up to the same power as a deity, well, you're technically bigger in power than that rock. So it doesn't have a problem talking to you. But when all of their powers combined because you're devoted to them.
Voltron?
Yes.
Holy Voltron.
So the last thing is kind of the antithesis of all of this, and that is a deity-less religion. So people want to believe that there is something powerful out there. People will always want to say, well, the god might have fallen, the gods might not never have been, but people want to lift something up so that they have something to believe in, so that they're better off. So literally you could have cults or religions that are small, but the culmination of their beliefs is powerful enough to create a power that can be tapped into. There might not be a power behind it, but it's a power that's there.
The power of shared belief. And it doesn't have to be a small religion. It could be a huge, enormous religion. Matter of fact, most atheists would say this exists in the real world. I mean, that in essence is what makes them atheists, right? Mm-hmm. But in your game world, that collective of people believing the same thing could basically give certain people divine power and allow them to function as they would in your game world.
And you could still take that same thing and turn it into, well, I am a true believer, and therefore I have access to it, or I happen to be a random dude who somehow tapped into that power, and I'm an unwilling cleric of a deity I don't believe in.
So there's a big difference between having a world where there's no divine power and having a world where there's no deities.
Yes.
If there's no divine power, like, none of this matters, right? Because you just will not have clerics, you will not have paladins, you will not have druids. But if you're saying, that there's divine power, that the magic is there, but traditionally where you would generally get that magic from doesn't exist in your world, you can still very easily incorporate it into your game. It's not hard. It's just there's no deities, or the deities or the deities are like absentee landlords, and they don't actually care what mortals do. They're not paying attention. Maybe it's a world where the deities have left it, or they haven't come to it yet. Could be introduced later in the game. There's a lot of different things you could do with this, but this is just another way to do some campaign and world building.
So, what do you guys think? Do you deal with this kind of stuff in your games? Why don't you discuss that down below in the comments? While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on Nerdarchy.com.
So until next time, stay nerdy.